Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Navigating Amateur Motocross. We are up to episode number 4. We want to thank everybody who's been supporting the first 3 episodes. The number of views keeps continuing to go up, and we're deeply appreciative of that. As always, I've got the man, the myth, and his legend, Mr. Derek Harris. How you doing, brother?
Hey, Coach. Good to have you on the show again, episode 4. I think you mentioned earlier that is we're calling this the Carmichael Show.
We'll call this the Carmichael Show, whether you like him or you don't. We're gonna. That's what we'll do, Derek, is we'll have every episode be a tribute. Obviously, next episode, I'm gonna go with a fan or heartfelt for myself would have to be Mike LaRocco, number 5. We'll let you come up with somebody if it's somebody other than Mike. But it's my understanding, this gentleman that we have our guest today, which first and foremost, Kyle, welcome. You are our first official guest on the Navigating Amateur Motocross. Derek had reached out to me and said, man, I think I've got the ultimate guy for our first guest. And so, Derek, I'm going to let you grab the rein here. Give us a little bit of background on the gentleman that was kind enough to join us today.
Yeah, so I'm super excited to bring on Kyle Swanson today. He is a main event finisher at Daytona Supercross in, I believe, the 250 class. Kyle is also an amateur national champion. He has a 450 Pro and 450B championship. He's local to my area, so I was a little older than Kyle and got to see his come up. And he was, at that time frame, 7 years is a pretty big age gap. So it's cool to see him go basically from 50s all the way on to kicking my ass on big bikes. And then from there, Kyle has transitioned himself into a trainer, and he is now helping out all varieties of youth and amateur kids who are chasing it. And I reached out to Kyle because now he is at the Kevin Windham facility. How is that going for you, Kyle? Lost your audio. There.
Yeah, man. It's an honor. It really is. It's everything that you would think it would be, which most situations don't work out like that. It's kind of like a trick or something behind closed doors. But when I came to Kevin's and joined with Kevin, and it from that point forward, it's been working with Kevin Windham every day. It's exactly how it sounds.
So Kyle, you reached out to Kevin at Freestone, as if I'm not mistaken, how this story happened, and just basically went up to him. You've been running your own training business here in Texas, in San Antonio, had developed a really awesome little business for yourself where you had all local talent. And you just basically went to Kevin and said, I'm going to drop everything I'm doing. I want to work with you. What was that like?
Yeah. Well, so how it went down actually was, it was the regionals at Freestone last year. It was the amateur regional, and I was racing it for the plus 25 class, and I'd gone there with all my riders. And I walked up into the tower to talk to Shan Garcia and JP Parson. And I was like, man, did you guys see Kevin Windham's here? That's crazy. I haven't seen the guy in forever. And Kevin pokes his head out from behind Shan, and he's like, what's up? And I was like, oh, dude, I'm so sorry. Like, that's so gay. Like, I didn't mean to fanboy. He's like, oh, dude, like, what's your name? And I told him who I was, and he goes, well, let's sit down. So we sat down next to each other. Dude, we just started going back and forth. We were like commentating this novice class race that was going on. And I don't mean to dog the novice class, but like, we were watching it, and there was some comedic things happening out there. And there's actually a kid with a blown shock. And like, I was acting like I was the kid, and he was acting like he was the dad. And like, we were going back and forth. That was the first experience I ever had with Kevin. So then Shan Garcia reaches back, and he leans back and goes, Kyle, are you going to win the next race? And Kevin goes, you're racing? I said, yeah, plus 25. He goes, what'd you get in the first moto? I said, 8, but I didn't do practice. I just showed up. I wasn't going to race. Last minute, I decided to race. And Shan goes, well, are you going to win? I said, yeah, I'm going to win the next one. And Kevin goes, I'll sit here in this chair right here if you really think you're going to win plus 25. And I look down and I go, well, I'm going to win. And he goes, so you got 8th in the first moto, and you're going to win this next moto? And I said, yes. And he goes, all right, I'll sit right here. Well, I ended up going out and winning the next moto by like 15 seconds. And he called me that Monday. That's really how it went. And when he called me, I was like, okay, look, I really do have a great thing going for me back in San Antonio. And I have so many amazing families that have supported me the last 3 years and me making that transition from a professional racer to a trainer. And Ian Grant Cycle Ranch took really good care of me and allowed me to facilitate out there. And that's one of the world-class facilities if you've ever been. And so I looked really good really quickly. So I was giving up a lot. But it was the risk I was willing to take with Kevin. And like I said, I did say to him, hey, look, I'm going to be leaving a lot behind. But if you think that there's something there, can I is there any way I could join forces with you? And he gave me to Loretta's, which at that point for regionals, right, I think it was 2 months. He's like, dude, come up here right now. I've got a house for you. Bring your wife. This is the deal. We'll work out. Bring your kids, and we'll just see how it goes. And it was so organic, and he truly just became a brother. I mean, a father figure as well, but really a brother immediately. And right after Loretta's, I got done racing Loretta's, and I didn't even really know what was to come. And he called, and he's like, where you at? I'm like, oh, I don't know, dude, just driving home. And he's like, you not coming back here? And I'm like, you want to do this? And he's like, oh, we got a plan. And that was it. So then I was like, all right, sweetheart, we're moving to Mississippi, and you're going to love it. From that point forward, this is where we've been.
So how is one of the questions anybody who's a fanboy of Kevin Windham might have for you is, what was it like getting to see him in the flesh, how his mind works? And he can still ride a dirt bike on a talent level that's probably unmatched by most people who throw a leg over a dirt bike. What is something you just picked up from him very quickly early on?
His ability to read an ever-changing track and reading it the correct way, right? Like a lot of riders can read a track. You can see things are getting rough. You'll move your lines. You'll see a hook in a corner and you'll try to get out of it quick, or you'll stand a little bit longer, a little bit more of the, as we will say now, Jet Lawrence, which I love him as a racer. I hate the credit that he's being given for that, because there's no lot of racers that stand up a lot. But, relating it to what we're talking about right now, everyone would know the Jet Lawrence. Stand up through the beginning of the corner, sit through the pocket into the exit. Knowing when to do that. Riders will watch Jet and be like, oh, I'm going to be a stand-up rider the rest of my life, everywhere I go. And you're not really paying attention to when he's standing and when he's sitting. And Kevin, his ability to read those moments, there really is a difference, and that's what I wanted to find out, because I've been doing this for 27 years and clearly I didn't master it, but I've been around a lot of good people and been surrounded by a lot of, unique situations in the sport. And I've got a lot of information. So I was wondering, is it something extra, or is he just that talented? And yes, I mean, the talent is needed, but no, dude, his ability to read a track blows my mind over anything. And to this day, I've been here a year. Today, we just got off the track 2 hours ago. I'm like, oh my God, like, how did we all not see that, Kevin? But we understand why we haven't seen it when he explains it. But in the moment, you're like, man, I feel like an idiot right now.
Yeah.
I'm a trainer, but I'm a student. I'm sitting there with him like, it's crazy. And that would be the biggest thing. It's just that ability to read the situation and effectively ride and know when to bring your percentage down and know when it's, going 70% is 100 at that moment.
Yeah. So I was going to say, how do you teach that to your kids? So now that you've noticed that, and you were obviously a pro level racer who was very good, how are you translating that to your students now? How is that something that we can turn into a coachable moment from a guy like Kevin who has that talent?
Man, I've been here for a year. So to be able to tell someone how to do it, rep it. I mean, it sucks to say repetition, and you can go into your backyard and just do it. It's truly paying attention to the riders right now. Like when you're watching TV, people just watch TV. And then they love the racers, and okay, this guy sets up out wide a lot, or this guy stands up a lot, or this guy doesn't ever take his leg off, and they'll notice those things. But there's so much more to a lap than goes into just those things. So much more. And with Kevin really brings that to light and has shown me how to read every single bit of what the bike is doing, and not just loading and unloading, because we've all heard that, but where the darkness in the dirt caused the bike to unload more than where the dirt's lighter. What? I guess darkness would hold moisture, light would be dry, so you'd have somewhat of you know what I mean? But see how complicated that almost just became? Yep. Within that? That's where it's so difficult to teach in a day or a word or a sentence or a phrase. It's really, there's a lot to it. And I think someone could do it, but you would really have to be aware, and you really got to pay attention to every second. And just like y'all know from anything in sports, you have to want it. And it comes down to that. And I'll bring up a name right now, the rider that we have with us here at Farm, Caden Dudney, who's kind of taken everybody by storm. He's 14 years old. That child, and I'll put him in the category as child. That child will send Kevin 20 videos of 20 scenarios in Supercross and tell Kevin, break this down for me. Because maybe he's not able to understand it, but that's how bad he wants it, you know? And that's what it takes to learn it, is that much want. And I'm not saying that, you know, you have to go to Kevin. If you go, it'll happen a little quicker. But that's really what it is. That's really what it comes down to. You got to want it so bad that you beat it that deep.
I kind of like what, go ahead.
Excuse me, Derek. You made a comment that you didn't go all the way. If you had a pie chart, what would you say what you've learned in the last year kept you from being in that top 1 or 2% at the very end of your career?
In a percentage of what was I missing, essentially, to what I would say 10%. And in my eyes, 10% takes you from a barely a main event guy or ever a main event guy in Supercross to a champion.
Absolutely.
And that's that fine line. Like, and that's where you'll see so many kids that are good enough, but they're not great. I always put myself in the categories I wasn't great. It's that big. And that's what's so frustrating about the sport. And that's where everyone's reaching to all these, they complicate their programs in ways that I don't believe that they all have to. And it's because we're fighting for that much, right?
Well, what's amazing to me is that you said you've been there for a year and you're still learning, and you've been racing for how many years did you say? 27? 27 years of racing, and you're still learning at the 27th year. Derek and I have talked a lot about this, and I don't mean to put Derek on the catbird seat here, but it's amazing to me how many people will not hire a suspension specialist or a motor specialist and try to figure it out the hard way. Like I said to Derek in episode number 2, if I was going to become a physician, I don't go and buy cadaver parts and start taking about art. I'd go read a book on somebody who's been there, done that, put it in Cliff Note version, and like you said, facilitate the learning curve. At 27 years and still learning, and you've been there for an entire year, what has been the biggest area of improvement you've seen with the riders that you brought from Cycle Ranch over there? Like, where was the big epiphany for them, just in general terms? Where's been the biggest progress for those existing riders? Is it the craft, like yourself?
The craft, and honestly, it's broke more people than made that I brought, and I say that because it showed them what it truly takes. To some, it isn't worth it, and to some, it was it. This is like, okay, I'm it. And
if you took 20 riders with you, how many tapped out? If you just using a random number, if you took 20, how many tapped out?
Man, 13.
Wow.
Hey, Kyle, that's a great question to bring to this that I had for you, actually, was our industry is full of facilities and full of places that I don't see improvement from the rider all the time. And I was not going to put names on blast. And I've come to the conclusion, it finally dawned on me that the facilities are there to make money a lot of times. And so at the end of the day, they could care less whether you're first or you're last. Even if they're passionate about it, this is a business. They need to pay their bills. You're the one who voluntarily pays the facility money as the athlete. So if you choose to keep on, even though the results aren't there, the facility views it as whatever. It sounds like over there where you guys are at, it's more than that. So how do you do that? I mean, essentially by saying, I'm going to push you, we're going to give you your best. Are you okay with him leaving?
Yeah, absolutely. And when they leave with a hug and a pat on the back and constant text messages to make sure that, you know, the next decision that they make, you know, they're still going down the right path and for the right reasons on it, really. Because there's so much to the sport and it's not beautiful for everybody. It isn't. And it does seem like a dream in the beginning for everyone. And really quickly, it can become very dark from a mental aspect, from a family aspect. And what's more important is your mental. You know, I don't really care at all if you ever go win a championship. I want in 4 years for us to be good friends and to be able to continue to share the knowledge that we learned together. And maybe you can teach me something later on. And just that the life that you get out of this sport, not the championships. Now, do Kevin and I want to win championships out of the facility? Absolutely. But I would way rather save a kid than push him to the breaking point. And as far as just all in life, we're okay to push someone to the edge of moto where they're like, hey, I'm done. I'm like, okay, good. Look, not good, but I'm glad you understand it. I'm glad that you're, brave enough to admit that. Let's talk about why you're done. Let's talk about, any changes that we can make if that's what we need to, or if this is completely, off the board, we're not racing anymore. We support that 110%. And we just want to, help our riders to be the best. Honestly, it sounds so cliche. Even saying it sounds so gay. It really does. But like, the truth is, we're the best for everybody. Like, if you want to go be a sick plumber, dude, you call Kevin. He'll help you out. Whatever kind of plumbing you want. You can call me. You want to learn how to raise ferrets. I have 4 ferrets. You know what I mean? Like, you way past dirt bikes. So that's the most important, is that you have a healthy life, all in all.
Derek, this reminds me of what you and I spoke about, is what is the definition of hard? And then, Kyle, what we do is we take it a step further and say, define your hard. Being financially independent is difficult, but being financially broke is difficult. Being in a relationship is difficult. Being alone is difficult. I mean, you can go through anything in life. And what Derek and I always say is choose your hard. I'm not going to try to figure out motors and suspension, especially when they should work together. I'm going to call Derek. Derek's not going to try to figure out strength to weight ratios, endurance, lactate tolerance, all of that. He's going to call me. Well, the two of us together, now we can elevate the game. And I'm just kind of curious from your standpoint, when you see people that tap out and they say, I'm done. I'm not saying leave the facility, but like in their words, I can't do anymore, Kyle. How much of it in your experience, again, just from a pie chart, how much of that's physical? How much is that mental?
100% mental, honestly. Maybe the physical side pushes them into the mental side, but I ran a marathon in January, and the farthest I'd ever ran in my life was 8 miles 2 months before that. I'm not a superhuman, but it's mental. It's mental. It's all of it is, and we can always trace it back. And I'll go as simple as saying, like, we'll sit them down and say, okay, look, do you have a girlfriend back at home that you miss? Well, I have my girlfriend, but we do pretty good without each other. Like, we've been doing it 5 months. Okay. All right. Well, that's something to take into consideration here. What are you going to do when you go home? Well, I'm just going to get a job and I'm spend time. Okay. So you're going to get a job and you're going to spend time with your girlfriend. That's freaking amazing. You should do that. Live your life. But why are you choosing to do that? Are you going to be able to get a better life? Or are you just wanting to be normal and live a normal life? And we support that too. And eventually they'll come clean with, man, I just don't like working this hard. This is gnarly.
Yep. Oh, stand by, Kyle. We lost you for a moment. It looks like you'll come back.
Yeah.
And I liked the way he said that, Derek. I want a normal life. And I've always been intrigued by that, because you and I have spoken about this off the air. I'm always interested when somebody says they want to have a normal life. And you and I talked about the idea, like, I've always tried to put myself around other people who push the bar up. And when you push the bar up, that group of people is the new norm. And I think I shared this with our listeners before, but I'll never forget when I was at the Olympic Training Center as a triathlete. I remember going into the cafeteria, and I remember walking in there and realizing, hey, that group of athletes over there, that's the best track and field athletes in the world, and that's the best volleyball players in the world, and that's the best strength lifters. And Kyle, what I was elaborating on is like what you said, when someone says they want a normal life, well, is a normal life with people who want to be successful and not just push yourself physically and mentally, but be a good person to others, elevate the game, help each other, have each other's back. That to me is a normal life. And I say to my clients all the time, if you want to be the next deadbeat, hang around 4 other deadbeats, you'll be the 5th deadbeat. If you want to be the next world champion, hang around 4 world champions and you'll be the 5th. So I always think it's interesting when someone says, I want a normal life. What's the difference between this side of the fence, striving to be a champion, and that side of the fence? In my opinion, and I hope I don't rub anybody the wrong way, but this is an authentic show, I'm always going to say you're on the wrong side of the fence, because I may not achieve, like the highest I've ever been ranked is 8th in the world racing BMX. That's the best I ever did. Well, for some people, they may have been 9th in the world and they would have given anything to be 8th. I was 8th in the world, I'd give anything to be top 3 in the world. We're always going to have something more than we wanted, but I'd never stop. And I've shared this with Derek and our listeners. I've been teaching myself the guitar for over a decade. I'm always pushing myself. Doesn't mean I can play the guitar well, but because I want to be on the other side of the fence where I can actually pick up a guitar, I can play some things and you two could go, oh, that's Matchbox 20. Okay, cool. Then I've accomplished my job. At least it's a recognition that I've raised the bar of my capability. So I do personally have a problem when people say, I want to have a normal life. What's a normal life? Get drunk, get your girlfriend pregnant, and work for minimum wage the rest of your life? If that's normal life, that to me is, you just took a step down. Derek and I talk about it all the time. Our dads pushed us up. The expectation was to get better, never allowed to dummy it down. So I wanted you to, when your phone kind of seized up there a little bit, do you mind elaborating on what you were saying? If you want to go home and you want to be with your girlfriend, that's cool. If you want a normal life and then be locked up, I want you to give you a chance to finish your thought.
Yeah, and if you want a normal life, and to what you even said, to me, a normal life is wanting simplicity of what you believe is simplicity and an easy way out. Because what I've done my whole life is normal. It's extremely normal. I don't feel anything I've done that normal. I've always gotten completely defensive with people who are like, oh, you live the dream, or when are you going to do normal things? What are you talking about? Like, when you go home and you go to that party that you thought you missed out on, and then you go get that job and you have that girlfriend, you're probably going to actually be working harder than the thing you gave up on when you wanted to be normal. You're that simplicity and that easy. It doesn't actually really happen. No matter what you do, if you choose to quit racing and you want to eat whatever you want to eat, and you want to never work out again, and you want to have a wife, and you want to have a 9 to 5, you're actually probably going to work harder in your mind than when you were at that facility. And that of them, you try to explain to them, like, look,
yeah,
this is normal. This is exactly what you're about to do is going to be harder. I will promise you.
Yep. I'm going to embarrass Derek in this exact area, and he has no idea I'm about to bitch slap him right now. What I think is so interesting is Derek is extremely intelligent, and he hung around kids in school and obviously in the advanced math classes and stuff. And there's people in high school that say, oh, I'm going to be a mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, until it gets hard. And then there's a lot of smart people that never become engineers because it got hard. And then how many people do you talk to that go, man, I can't believe I thought that was hard at 20 years old. And so they didn't go the engineering route. They didn't get the pay. They didn't get all the things that come with it. To your point, exactly. I wish there were more smart people like Derek, but there's a lot of smart people that never leveraged it. How many people do you know that said, well, I could have been a doctor? Well, could, would, and should is not allowed in my athlete's vocabulary. Never. So I don't mean to embarrass you, Derek, but you're smarter than hell. And there's a lot of people that say they want to be an engineer until it gets tough, and then they don't become one. And you were able to persevere. Well, now you're running a business on the education.
Yeah, it's a tough challenge to Kyle has nailed all of this in the sense that when you decide to give up your dream of riding, if you had the talent, I'm actually dealing with that right now with one of our former guys, and they're at that transition from amateur to pro. They haven't had the opportunities that I think they probably earned as an amateur. So unfortunately, that's become a big challenge for them as a pro, is to say, do I want to continue on and persevere even though I have to work twice as hard again? Meaning I didn't get the factory ride, I didn't get the bike, I didn't get the opportunity. But like Kyle is saying here, well, choose your hard. If you decide to go out now and become a regular human being that doesn't ride dirt bikes anymore, quote unquote regular, paying bills is hard. Making money is hard. Developing a career is hard. So you probably, like Kyle said, I mean, I see it all the time with young high school kids who are more than willing to go get a job and do whatever bullshit that they're doing inside their fast food and minimum wage job, and then are not willing to put in a little bit of extra work in school and get good grades. Well, guess what? You work hard at the school side like your boss was telling you to do it at fast food, and you would be getting good grades. But instead, you're willing to put that work in for $12 or $14 or $18 an hour, and you're not willing to put that work in yourself for your future.
Let's go into a politically incorrect environment, because Derek and I are good at doing this and pissing people off. What are your thoughts in regards to, do you think because our sport puts an incredible emphasis on, you've got to win this year, there is no next year, you're on a 65, the whole world revolves around you winning this year. how much of the sport kind of cultivates an attitude that it's now or never? You know, if we have young athletes that we're dealing with that are in football, they're thinking NFL, X amount of teams, lots and lots of opportunities. How much of it do you think that the parents buy into this Kool-Aid kind of mindset? We're only as good as our last weekend of racing. A lot of the decisions that are made by the sponsors do fall into that category. How much of that do you think factors into it? All right, I tried super hard for 5 years. I didn't make it according to the industry standards. So screw it. I'm going to go a different direction. How much of that do you think plays into it, in your opinion, from the two of you guys? What do you think?
You know, okay, I do believe it. You know, you're only as good as your last race. I think that there's a little bit to that, because if you get last, well, that's it. If you win by a big margin and the reason that you didn't win the next race is understandable, I don't think it really holds that much. And I don't know if the whole industry really holds such a, you know, a finger on, you know, you got to win now or it's over. I mean, yeah, we've seen like people like AC and Fortner win now and create that, but look what's happened too. And I'm not, you know, trying to just pick on a PC guy. I just use him as an example of like, we look at them like, oh, well, you know, AC was pro at 17 and won right away. And then you got this and like, I've got to do that. Well, yeah, but look at Phil Nicoletti. And I know that he's not factory PC, but if he could go out there and win, I bet Mitch would sign him just like blows. And there's this.
I'll ask you this, Kyle, real quick. I think the question here would be like on the amateur side is, how do you build a rider? So from your perspective, you take a kid with some talent, and I believe we have kids who are talented, right? But there's a lot of them. Our sport has a lot of them. So in your opinion, how important is it that they win on 50s, 60s, 80s? Or how important is it that they, as a trainer, how do you build them into a winner late in their amateur career and then hopefully into pro to be a successful pro? Like, how do we do that without the culture of, I got to win at 65s, I got to win at 85s? I think you need to be good, but I also think you need to build yourself up into an athlete that will become very good. That's kind of my opinion.
Yeah, it's so tricky. All building a rider is so complicated because so much of it honestly can't be built. There's, you know, you have to have a little bit of talent. There's so much of the family that plays into that too. So there's only so much you can't. The rider, if they didn't win on 50s, well, I'll take Caden Dudley. I'll say, because we have him with us right now, right? He didn't win anything on 50s. I don't think he won anything on 60s. Started to win on 80s. Broke his arm, completely missed Loretta's on Super Mini, signed a full monster deal, and hasn't raced Loretta's yet on big bikes. Not even one. Now, since he didn't win, and now he's 250B, he's said to win Loretta's this year, said to just win everything from here on out. It's about discipline, him having the right amount of discipline at the right time and knowing when to have fun. That's so big, because if you just push them into the ground now and you say, okay, look, you're so close, kid. You're 2 years away from going pro. You didn't win on 50s, but you're about to win Anaheim 1. And we really do believe that that's a possibility. Our biggest thing with him is having him be as comfortable as he can in his ability. Like, he already has the speed. He's already got the talent. He's got the support of mom and dad. He's got the good trainers. He's happy where he lives. He's living a healthy lifestyle, and he doesn't have a cell phone. He loves it. His mom didn't take it from him. He loves that. You can't teach that. You know what I mean? He goes to bed at 9 o'clock at night every night. I can't teach that. Mom has to have our back on that. Not every parent does that. Most parents are like, no, I'm cool if my kids stay up. Like, okay, I get that. We have to have fun, but there's a certain type of fun. Caden doesn't have to be taught to go to bed. He just goes to bed. So that's the part of this that's so complicated when it comes to building a great rider. It takes a little bit on our end and a lot of it from the family's end, and a lot of it, the rider just has to have the discipline.
Well, that's a great term, right? Discipline. So some of that can be told and taught. Hey, you should do this. You should do this. You should do this. Coaches gives that to his athletes from a fitness standpoint, right? He says, hey, these are things that will make you healthier. These are things that will make you fitter. But unfortunately, coach can't go out there and make you go to bed at 9. He can't make you go out there and ride the road bike or the mountain bike or the gym work or put in the right effort on the right days. That takes what you said is the term discipline.
Yeah. And what's so wild is we have a lot of really good riders here at Farm and an extremely amount of talented riders. And Caden stands above them all, even the pros. And they're doing the same workouts he's doing. They're listening into the same lessons. They're riding the same laps, and they are lost. They'll come to me and be like, not in a bad way, negative way, because I know they're going to watch this, but they're lost, and they know it. They'll come to me, well, how is he beating us? It doesn't make sense, Kyle. I'm eating healthy. I don't have a girlfriend. I heard that's a bad thing. I tried to go to bed the other night at 10, and I normally go at 12. Like, I'm doing everything. Why isn't it working? And I'm like, see how much effort and how much it's hurting you to become that? You have to want it so bad that you're not even telling me to. You're just going to bed at night. It's just happening that way. You're not up on your phone on Instagram scrolling. You just don't want to. Can you scroll on Instagram and have a girlfriend and be a champion? Absolutely. But it takes a whole different type of rider and discipline to do that. It really does.
It's so funny that you say that, because when I'm talking with my clients, I say that's the difference between your perception is it's an investment or it's a sacrifice. If I'm giving up sodas, am I doing that as an investment or a sacrifice? If I go to bed without my mom and dad cattle prodding me, do I have to wait to be asked to brush my teeth? Do I have to wait to be asked to take my dishes away from the table? Do I have to be asked to get my gear bag prepped? Do I have to be asked to get my energy fuel ready for tomorrow? That's why we say champions have champion habits. And this is where I do agree with the facility mindset. If you're going to go to a facility and you're under the tutelage of someone like yourself in KW, you're getting the Cliff Note version of, okay, this is what you should do. But as I always say to Derek, I can't create the fire in the belly. I can't create the discipline. I'm going to hold you to a high level of accountability because that's what it takes to be a champion. But if I explain to you the why, and then you look at that as a sacrifice and not an investment, there's the distinguishing factor between a good and a great. That's the difference between a one-time champ and a multi-time champ. Kyle, if you don't mind, I want to back the train up just a smidge. I think there's going to be a little bit of confusion with the parents when they hear you say, he didn't win on 65s, he didn't win on 85s, but he was able to ink a monster deal. Do you mind elaborating on how that transpired based on what knowledge you have about that situation?
Well, he ended up at the end of his 85 career, he went to Loretta's. I wish I had the direct facts, but I'm close enough with the family. If I mess them up, I think that they'll be all right with it. But I don't think he won Minios. I don't think he went to Minios on 85s. I don't think he didn't win JS7. I don't think he won. He went and won Loretta's. He went out and won both motos at Loretta's. And they said, done, deal's done. And there's so much to say about that too, because there's families with us right now that are like, Kyle, look, what if we just put all of our money, all of our time, and all of our finances into just Loretta's? And that's it. We just focus on Loretta's, and that's all we do. And then in hopes that he goes there and wins. But if he loses, we have zero exposure all year long, and we didn't go nowhere. The truth is, we can look at each other in the eyes and say, he ain't going to win. Even if it's a year now. He's probably not going to win. Or, I think that's a good push, but currently your rider's been crashing a lot. Odds are you'll probably get hurt in 6 months all the way up to Loretta's. And then not odds are, but statistics are showing, that probably ain't going to happen. Every situation is different for every person. And that's what's so hard about this sport. And as a trainer, people want an answer now. And it's like, it matters the not only the rider, but the rider's brother, the rider's mom, the rider's grandma, the rider's dad. The biggest thing that happened to me in my career that really sidelined me or kind of derailed what was happening was my parents got divorced when I was 14. And that changed my everything that happened for the rest of my career. My mom and dad were still super supportive. My dad was still there every race. My mom was at most of them. But losing that one thing took the talent that I had and almost put a dent in it because of all the other sides that I wasn't able to put together with having a full program.
Yeah, I would say that you touched on a couple of things, and I would say maybe to make them condensed is what you're saying is that to have a successful athlete takes a team, and that team is your family, the people around you. Like you said, it's not just the athlete. Everybody has to be rowing the boat the same direction.
Yes, like fully. And that's also something that I've learned from being here at Kevin's, because at home, I dealt with a lot of young riders, right? And although I had gone through the sport a lot myself, and had many teammates and been on many teams in different countries, and I got to see theirs, I didn't know their family dynamic that well, right? And I didn't get to understand it like that. And then coming here to Kevin's, we have all, a lot of A riders, a lot of B riders, all the way down. And you start to see that pattern where you're like, okay, why is he different? You're like, well, every time he does a start, his mom sets his whole shot device and his dad moves his starting blocks. Okay, I haven't seen that very often. That's one thing. And then, okay, yeah, mom's do it every lap time. Dad's the mechanic. I know that lifestyle's not obtainable. I know that's not obtainable for everybody, right? That is very rare. But he just won freestyle by 30 seconds. So I'm trying to diagnose what is that difference, dude? Because I'm doing what he's doing. Heck, I'm riding with the kid. And I'm like, I know a little bit more than he does. But his whole circle of life is perfect. And I mean that. It is perfect.
So how do you set that up for a family who watches right now? How can they strive to be better in that department? So actually, this is a great conversation because I know your dad, okay.
Yeah.
And my dad was probably wired very similarly. I would say both our dads were pushers. Like, your dad could yell and scream if he needed to at you, and I'm not going to say Dean was that way all the time, but what are healthy habits as a parent? So when you're at the races, what are some things that you see that just consistently could be improved upon by families? Like his family structure with Caden is good. What can other families take away from this podcast and say, hey, we need to improve on this? What are some healthy habits on how to be good on race day and on practice day? Just from a family standpoint, you see wrong.
If your racer wants it bad enough, he or she is hard enough on themselves. If you're over there screaming at them and having to yell at them to get them to do what they've got to do, they're not going to become a champion. Tolmac's dad never screamed at him. You know what I mean? Dungey's dad never screamed at him and grabbed him by the back of the neck. Maybe they were stern in certain ways, but they didn't do that. The families that did that, every single friend I have no longer has contact with their mom and dad like I do because of yelling. Now, where my dad would have wanted to make things different, honestly, my dad talks about the divorce, and he does, and he apologizes to me. And it wasn't actually his fault, if we will. It wasn't his decision. But he's like, Bubba, he says that, Bob, I'm so sorry. We weren't able to give you the whole thing. Like, me and Mom split, and he's seen it right there. For that time, because of the situation we went through, my mom wasn't there for 6, 7, 8 months, and then we kind of yo-yoed back and forth where I would lean towards mom and lean towards dad. I got pulled back and forth. I moved with my mom for a little, and then my dad for a little, and they both tried so hard to give me what they thought I needed, but because we didn't have it all, it didn't work. And I would say for the kids and the families coming up, stop yelling at your damn kids, you idiots. Stop screaming at them. They want it bad enough, they're mad enough at themselves. And that, I think that breaks people faster than anything.
And Derek, I'd like to dive in on this on two different components. And I just had this conversation yesterday. I think, and Kyle, I'd love your opinion on this because you take on the term trainer, right? I've always said to the parents, please let me be the bad guy. Please don't jeopardize your father-son relationship, your father-daughter relationship, mom-son, mom-daughter relationship. If you're going to put the trust in the facility, the trainer, my program, your program, sum total of all programs, at the end of the day, your parent, let them be your child. Even if they go out and they win Loretta's and they win A1 in a couple of years, they're still your child first, A1 winner second. The second thing I'd like to say along that thread of thought, because Derek asked a really good question, and that was, what would you recommend to a family based on like what you were saying? Mom sets the starting device, dad moves the starter blocks. What I think is so powerful, and Derek, your question was right on the money. What's the difference Why does it work for one and it doesn't work for the other? Now, this is my 2 cents worth. And obviously, this entire podcast is designed on us trying to share experiences and what we've seen. Doesn't always work for everybody, like you said, Kyle, so well. The thing that I always try to encourage my families is whose role is what.
Yeah.
If I were to ask you who drove, if I were to ask you who tightened the chain, if I asked you who changed an air filter, who put the tear-offs on, who packed the sandwiches, who refilled the race fuel, and you go, Rob, that's so trite, that's so benign. Oh, really? Go to a factory rig and ask anybody under that awning where a 10 millimeter wrench is at. And everybody under that awning can show you where that 10 millimeter wrench is at. However, the rider doesn't even worry about whether or not that factory truck's going to be at the next race. Why? Because he knows that that truck's going to be driven. That driver knows when he gets there, he's going to wash it. He's going to go grocery shopping. He's going to start setting up the awnings. When races start, he's going to be filming. He's cooking for hospitality. The mechanic flies in. He assumes truck is there, awning is out, bike is out, toolbox is set. Everybody knows their role. Everybody knows the responsibility. The cool part about it is the mechanic isn't afraid to help with the awning. The driver isn't afraid to help tighten the chain. But everybody knows their boundaries, but then everybody has each other's back, and then everybody stays in their lane. And at the end of the night, the goal of winning becomes systematic. Now, I know it's tough for mom and dad because you are mechanic, driver, cheerleader, cook, chef. I get it. There's a lot. But this goes back to what you said, Derek, that I think is so on point. You've got two parents trying to fulfill the role of literally, and I'm going to take a punch number here. Let's just say there's 10 to 15 people underneath a factory awning, from truck driver to manager to 3 mechanics to chassis guys, suspension guys, tire guys, gear, goggles, couple riders, PR, right? So mom and dad are trying to take on this extravagant role. And then as soon as, we get the string so tight that the slightest thing goes wrong, the string snaps. Now dad's throwing wrenches. Everybody gets a silent treatment on the way home. Expectations weren't met. Expectations weren't articulated. Your family blows up. And I think it goes back to what you were saying, Derek, right there.
I was going to say, I had a pusher of a dad, and at one point in time, racing was not fun for me.
Pull your microphone over, Derek.
Well, I had a pusher for a dad, and at one point in time, racing became no fun. And it was a short period. And it was also my, side of things not being in the right place. But I always like to. You can see it routinely with families, with parents, etc., where they make the race weekend go worse because of their parents do. Because of, like you said, Kyle, their reactions, not just yelling and screaming, but like Coach said, are you throwing stuff in the pits, or are you giving your kid the silent treatment? At the end of the day, your kid has to be the driver of success. If the kid doesn't want to win, he doesn't want to win. You can't force that out of him as a parent. So you don't need to make it worse by being a sour individual or, and granted, I do think certainly, like you as a trainer, Kyle, probably know days where you can fire up one of your guys and you can go fire them up and get a little bit of result out of them. They need that. But you shouldn't make the whole week, what is this, a whole week you have to live there? You don't want to make that whole week worse by being a jerk the whole time.
No, and to those dads that are listening right now or will listen to this, and they're like, yeah, but screw that. If I don't get on his ass, then he'll do what he's supposed to do. And we're winning championships because I do that. Like, okay, yeah, that's cool. And that won't work for you right now. But as soon as that kid gets a little bit of freedom and a way to say, Dad, he's going to do it. And it's going to be when he's about 16 years old, 17 years old, when he's going pro, just like all the other stories we've heard, he's going to can dad. He's going to live this wild, I'm speaking openly, but he's going to can dad. Mom might still be a part of it. Maybe, maybe not. Dad will try to be a part of it, but he won't have a relationship with them. And then the grand scheme of life, having that relationship with parents is more important than the championship.
Well, we watched this through your era with Stroop and with Izzy. We literally in this act.
Taron Odell won 70-plus amateur championships. His parents split up at the end of his career, at the end of his amateur career. And they actually, I actually won't go too much into detail, but it was in the public eye. Mm-hmm. And tell me about his pro career.
Yep. Well, you got a great example. He was an unbelievable amateur, like Stroop, Wilson, whatever. He could beat them all.
And his dad was the mean dad that would freaking go crazy on him and throw stuff and blah. And then he was winning and he was a bulldog and he even looked like a bulldog. Like,
Yeah.
he's just a bulldog. And I really respect Tanner Odell. And it's cool to see him back racing again. But unfortunately, for someone that had it all, soon as he was able to tell his dad, dude, I'm out of this. He did that. He tried to do Supercross on his own out of California. And it just didn't work. Not because he wasn't good enough, not because he wasn't talented enough. It just didn't work. I heard a great analogy. Yeah.
Yeah, he had opportunities.
Yeah, he was living at Grindstone in California. It was all there. He still had his connections. He still had test tracks to go ride at. He still had all this knowledge, a lot of the sponsors. Dude, I don't even know. He made the night show, but I think he only did A1 and then just said, I'm done. Because he knew. He's like, I know I'm good enough, but I know it ain't never going to happen. Because from my life and what's happened, it's just too much to put together for me. So he took a break. I think has a wife, kids, got a job. Dude's back racing again, absolutely killing it. But 70 plus amateur championships. I don't know how many Loretta Lynn titles he has, but he has a lot. Didn't even go pro because dad pushed him all the way to that breaking point. When he said no more, that was it. And most kids think, I can make it without dad or mom. No, you can't. Promise you.
Yeah, that's a great point. You really can. It takes a family structure that functions. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Nobody's perfect, but it has to function. I actually have a list of questions here, Coach, that I think I can put into a couple questions into one, and I'll let both of you freeform on it. Kyle, I have 3 in a row. I think what I would say is, now with the modern training facilities, we have less racing than ever as amateurs. We just basically have the big races. And then the second part to that question is, with the amateur facilities, a lot of kids just stay at one facility and they don't go to different tracks, different dirts, different locations. What is your opinion on, obviously you're at a facility and it's more convenient to be there, but do you think kids should get more gate drops? And then also, even though they're at your facility, what do you guys try to do to prepare them or expose them to other track conditions, other tracks, other scenarios?
Well, we're extremely fortunate because Kevin owns 2,000 acres and has always had motocross on that land. So we've got 5 different tracks. So we try to give them that stimulation by offering 5 different styles of tracks. Now, we don't have 5 different styles of dirt. We have about 3. And we've got, should we bring sand in? Do we have a sand track? Like, everyone talks about sand. There's not very many sand amateur nationals. You know what I mean?
100%. Actually, you bring that up. I tell people this all the time because it's a Texas flaw, and you had to experience this. Back when I worked with Zane Merritt and Blake Nieheiser, both of them rode the Texas, Dallas area tracks and were pretty good dirt. All of the outdoor nationals and amateur nationals are essentially a clay base that gets ruts, and it's hard. It's not a sandy dirt. The only track Zane really stood out at as a pro was Millville, which was a dirt very similar to where he trained at Underground.
Yeah. No, and that's you. Simulating the dirt is the biggest issue. If you go to a facility that only has one track and one dirt, which I don't think any of them really do now. I think everyone's pretty versatile, or for the most part, in the Texas facilities, I think they've all got quite a bit of tracks. But like, it was an issue that I had ran into at Cycle Ranch as a trying to create a training facility out of it was sand. Everything I was working with was sand, and yeah, I could make a pretty damn strong rider and give you a real strong lower back in sand. But you're going to be a fish out of water when you go hit a rut full of 10, a face with 10 ruts. And so, there was a rider that we had that was just really pushing the sand. And so, we encouraged him to go to Sandbox. Hey, it's in the name. Go to Sandbox. If that's what you think you need, you may need that. Like that may be what if you really mentally, truly believe that's what it'll do, it might do it. Whether it be a placebo or whether it just be what you need, then go do that. Kevin and I will explain to you why we think that decision might be, we can alter that decision and make you understand that might not be what you're missing. But if you really think you're missing that, we support it all the way through. And
then how much racing, they don't race as much as they used to. You grew up racing practically once or twice a month? Yeah. So like, I kind of miss that because my thing that I see now is that at the local races, a C rider who thinks he's pretty good will then go to a national and get his butt whooped because he hasn't actually gotten to race a local race with a good national C rider or a D rider or the A rider. Those your level of talented kids only race nationals. But do you think maybe if you could wave a magic wand, should kids hit more gate drops?
Yes, 110%. Because at a facility today, we're practicing starts, right? And we have 15 kids out there. You don't get that same want. And once again, you shouldn't have to teach it. You know, you should want it the same every time, but it doesn't matter how good the riders are. You can even tell 6, 7 gate drops in. They're like, hey, how many do you have left, Kyle? I'm like, dude, stop. What? You just whole shotted 6 of those. Like, you're not excited? He's like, yeah, can we let go? So then the next one, he didn't get the start, and he knows what I'm talking about. And he didn't get the start. He didn't care. He was like, yeah, all right, whatever. I got 6 of them. And you're like, you just will never be able to simulate that pressure and what it really takes to want it. But then you take that same kid to freestyle for Texas Winter Series, and they don't talk, they don't blink. You can't simulate that. And Kevin says it all the time. He's like, what do we do? He's like, do we literally threaten them? But like, if you don't get it, you're getting kicked out. If you don't get it, you can't ride for 2 days. If you don't get 2 whole shots this week, you ain't riding all next week.
Yeah, how do you simulate pressure? It's very tough, right? Very, very, very tough. And I agree. I see it all the time where kids lock up on race day, become a different human. Coach talks about the physiological side, right, Coach? Like they'll be a different human being on food and drink. Maybe you could touch on that.
Well, it goes back to what Kyle's been saying. If you don't understand the why behind it, and that's what's so frustrating from our perspective. I'm going to turn 56 next month. And at 56 years old, I look at this and I go, how many times do I have to say it before you understand why we're doing it? And it's easy for me. It is as it is for you guys. Trust me. I don't need you to learn it the hard way. Just trust me. And then you go back to the idea that, okay, they said on social media, TikTok is 5 seconds long, slide, 5 seconds. We did a study last year at Loretta's. We filmed several gate drops on some of the small bikes. Watch when the 2-minute board goes up, and we were out in the middle of the field, and we were filming the tops of the visors. The visors never sit still because they have the complete inability to focus because they've been taught 5 second swipe, 5 second swipe, 5 second swipe. And I'm not going to say it's a pandemic because it makes me sound like a 56-year-old grumpy man. But literally, if you sit and you watch the young generation, they've been trained to not be able to focus, which disgusts me because now you have the school system that's pumping out ADHD medicine saying kids can't focus. Well, no shit, Sherlock. You hardwired young kids, 5 second swap, 5 second swap. So now all of a sudden they're sitting on the starting grid. They can't focus on the 2-minute board. They can't physically look at the gate for more than 5 seconds without looking away. And the gate drops. And they go, oh, my start's up. So it goes back to like what Kyle's saying. Sure, you can somewhat simulate it, but you can't emulate it. And I like what Kevin is saying. I like what Kyle is saying. It goes full circle to what we said earlier. How do you create pressure? Through accountability and responsibility. I love that. Don't get a whole shot. You can't ride for a week. Now you just raised the bar. Now you just forced focus and attention. But then we go back to the dangerous part. We're asking and demanding attention on a human being that's been trained not to focus. They literally, and we're not playing the blame game. We're not playing the victim game. If you train yourself to not focus for more than 5 seconds at a time, you won't be able to focus for more than 5 seconds at a time. I apologize. I don't remember who the young man is that you were speaking about earlier that doesn't have a cell phone. What a blessing that is. He has great attention span. His life doesn't live in a world of artificial. He's not constantly, as Johnny Hopper always says, the theft of joy is comparison, right? Most people don't put their bad day on Instagram. What do they put? They exaggerate the truth. Oh, look at me. I'm so fit. Look at this big moto. We've even talked about it, Derek, on our show previously, that there's pros that get paid to posture as if they're doing something when they're not doing it. They'll go in the gym, they'll spray some water on themselves and talk about how this energy drink did a great job of helping them get through a workout. It's in their contract that they got to put this stupid message out on Instagram. It's just like the facade of an empty energy drink can in every interview now. The can is empty.
Or full of water. Yeah.
No, it's empty.
Right.
There's not. And they do the pseudo, and now, because if you watch the transition of the TV, it used to be make sure you turn the logo to the camera. Everybody does it. Well, then it was we need to make sure that the can's open, so the can's now open. Well, now you got to act like you're drinking from it to try to convince the young children that you're drinking the energy drink on the podium. It's so stupid because it's so easy to see, because you can see when somebody hands an empty can, right? So what's the message that we're trying to convey here? There is no reality until you get forced into it. So I like the idea that, hey, I'm going to take away your ability to ride the rest of the week if you don't get the whole shot. Well, then what happens? They blow the start. They cry because they can't ride for 2 weeks. But yet we're making a demand out of a human body that hasn't been trained to be successful. We want, and if this isn't making sense, guys, let me know. We're asking an accountability factor over here without the foundation of preparation over here. You see what I'm saying? The kids are trained to focus for 5 seconds. And then when we ask them to focus for 10 and they can't, then we want to discipline them.
Right. And we need to simulate them, but then they need to realize there's a consequence to their action. That's what I like. So here's the other side of that. Well, not the other side of that, Kyle, but the other one I kind of had was you guys now have, I've seen some of it. You have Supercross and your guys ride it, which is a new thing in our sport because of futures, which is fantastic. That was probably a challenge for you early in your career. How the heck do you transition from a motocross amateur national rider to a Supercross pro, which is what pays the bills, without ever having ridden a Supercross track shy of maybe heats or something that somebody had that ability to put together? My question for you, Kyle, is how early should parents be transitioning their kids to Supercross? And there must be a minimum barrier of entry to a level. Like you can't put a D rider on a Supercross track. In your opinion, how should families be making that transition?
And that's I love that you're talking about that, because Kevin and I are going through a bunch of stuff right now with trying to develop that program and efficiently, effectively. At the beginning, I was saying that I thought, and I still do believe that you as early as you can. Now there's a real broad Supercross track style. You know what I mean? Like if you can build something to simulate that tight racing while they're 8 years old, build it. Like you don't got to build a dragon back, a triple, and 3 on, 3 off. But I think it's extremely important as early as possible to build berms right into a jump. Make it a mellow jump. You might not even be able to catch air off that jump, but that whole motion and not arena cross. It's a lot different than arena cross, and people get that wrong. People think, oh, they build a arena cross track when they're young, and then I'll build Supercross. No, there's a difference to it. Like you got to have the same length in the berm. That's a big thing. How quick you get out of a section and back into a section really changes an entire track. So I think as early as you're able to, I really do. And that's something Kevin and I are going through right now with having, this next year, we're going to build 2 Supercross tracks. And he's like, do we build 2 legit ones, or do we build a legit one and kind of the legit one? And I'm like, okay, well, who rides the kind of legit? And he's like, well, like B riders and C riders. I'm like, well, B riders ride the fully legit.
So, but I have a same plan on that. I have the same thought on that. Number one, the Deegans did it right, which is even on 65s, he had a 2-scale 6 Supercross track. So a triple that would be a 3N that would be big on a big bike was made smaller bump, smaller faces, smaller jumps, smaller distance. It could be a 3N on an 85. I agree with you entirely on that. Make the corners right, the feel right, but you can make it to scale so that if you have the money to do that early. I think I agree with you. I think we need a B-level Supercross track for the early development of Supercross, of your C guys, your early B guys. And in my opinion, you could just do it simply where it's the same spec jump, same size, but every single landing, like on a triple, is built as a double. You don't need the triple. Build it a little longer so if they pace it, they're not dead. The same with some of your 3Ns. Make that a 3N to a table so they can learn how to get on if they're a little short or get all the way over. Stuff like that could be way safer, but it's the exact same obstacle, just transitioning them to that. The other part is teaching them Supercross skills, how to case, how to learn how to do a jump where you jump off the side of a track, all of those types of things.
How to load and unload the suspension, what jumping long does, absolutely, all those things. And that's something that even now on this conversation and being here with Kevin for a year, it bothers me how there's just still nothing for amateurs. I love the futures thing. It's great. Makes no damn sense to me that you don't have to qualify for it. How is there not a whole separate series that is held by other people that continue to groom people into this position?
Me and Coach have had this conversation, and I'm sure there's more to come on this conversation, but you're dead on, Kyle. So as an example, in Texas, they tried 1 year where you had to go to like 3 farms or go to your region and have a qualifier, but it was on an outdoor track. Like,
yeah,
what are you doing? And then on top of that, one of our athletes, a kid named Alicorn, who is just a local Texas kid, nice kid, engineering student now at Texas A&M, really smart, valedictorian. They were not allowed to ride any actual legit Supercross tracks anywhere in Texas at the time. None of the facilities would allow them because he was not a pro card holding pro, and that was their requirement. That's when Futures was early, and now facilities are bending. Okay, we're allowing kids to practice it. But to me, you're dead on. We have Futures, but we don't have any national plan to prepare kids for Futures. We need tracks everywhere. We need qualification process. I agree entirely. You nailed the head.
Well, what's hurting us so bad with that decision that they're making to just pull random names is you've got kids out there in the Futures that are qualifying 13 seconds under the Drew Adams. So then now you're painting this picture that, this stuff's like anybody can get in this. This is simple. So now it's not prestigious anymore. So it doesn't hold that value. Now you're just anyone can go. You know what I mean? And
they need to go. We need the 13-second a lap off kid out there, but it may not be that. Like you said, that's an invite stage. They might have found a better athlete or more of a qualification in there. The problem is, how do we do that? We need to have the 13-second lap off kid get opportunities to learn, but also we want the best kids out there at the same time. I agree. There's a whole lot here that we could discuss forever. Unfortunately, I don't think we're not failed and we're not going to solve it. You know what I mean?
Well, the problem that comes in is the frustration for the parents, because their whole thing is what do I need to do to make my rider eligible? And you're not. You're either going to have to be on a factory team. You have to and the factory teams are a little bit of a farce, because we all know that the majority of these quote unquote factory amateur riders, I'd say 9 out of 10 are pay to play programs. Let's just call a spade, right? So when you look at the idea that there's a proliferation of pay to play programs, even to and including the guys that are in the Saturday night program that declare that they're on a team, they're not. They're paying to be on a team. I don't have a problem with it, but again, the lack of transparency is a tad bit nauseating. But then where this has a double-edged sword is Feld realized when we used to have the Futures races and then they would race the day after, obviously it wasn't lucrative enough. I mean, let's face it, this is a business. So then when they tried to pull them into the night show on Saturday, you had people who, let's face it, don't get a chance to ride on a to-scale Supercross track during the week. So what did they do? All right, we're going to go to the OEMs, the kids that you so-called say are on your factory program. You carry the burden of getting these kids on a Supercross track during the week. And then that way, when they show up on Saturday night, we're not carting everybody off on a gurney. Stop and think about this from 10,000 feet. That's been the biggest genesis of change at the Futures, at the Supercross races on Saturday night. They want to see somebody like a Drew Adams that's already familiar with whoops, already familiar with big triples, bike's already set to spec. They can go full send mode. Where the danger comes in, Derek, to your point, and Kyle, you talked about the guy that's 13 seconds behind. Well, the problem is 4 or 5 guys got hurt. Now we have all this, the gate doesn't look full. We're calling this the Futures. We don't have 22 guys on the gate. So what happens? They start pulling some strings and they get some local kids to show up. Well, that's a guy that's 13 seconds behind. He doesn't have the guts to go through the whoops by sending it because he has no suspension set up. So he rolls them. Then you have Drew Adams that goes by him looking like he's tied to a pole. I don't understand what the message is that you're trying to send.
You'll laugh, Coach. When you say suspension, that Alicorn kid I'm talking about, he got in to go race Dallas, right, in the real deal. He rode full-blown outdoor suspension we had done for him. And I told his dad, I'm like, hey, you shouldn't even put him on that track. Yeah. And he's like, oh, it'll be okay. I'm like, no, like, you should not put him on that track. If he goes long or short on one of these ribbons or triples, like, he's going to get hurt. It's outdoor suspension. He's not good enough to be that well-timed. They went out and did it. I'll give the kid credit. He hit every big jump on the track. But to me, that should almost be a precursor. You should not allow your athlete to go out there on outdoor suspension.
Well, and then the part that adds a little bit more of the frustration to the parents who are listening to this show is, and again, I don't know how stupid the promoters think the listeners are and the viewers are. It's just like the fake drinking of the can. You can see how every drink company is kind of following the same mantra. Logos turning towards it, hold it, act like you drink it, act like you're swallowing it. How stupid do they think we are? Well, then you go and you listen. How many shows have we seen so far this year where they've made the athletes talk about how great the futures is and what a game changer it's been in their development as an athlete? Bullshit. The difference on you making it as an athlete is the fact that you're practicing on a full-blown supercross track during the week. It's not the opportunity to race on a Saturday night. How stupid do you think we are? And when you have an athlete that sits there and says, where you hear the commentators, well, let's talk to rider XYZ and talk about the influence of the futures race on his career. There wasn't even futures races when these guys were coming up.
You're dead on.
How stupid do they think we are?
It's that they got the chance to ride Supercross, which is a huge improvement for our industry.
No,
we really do.
I'm sorry, Derek. What I'm saying, I'm just going to pull AC because he's going to retire. They're saying, hey, let's have AC talk about the futures.
Oh, an existing row.
Futures.
Yeah.
They didn't exist when he was coming up. How stupid did the promoters think we are that you got a guy, hey, what's your opinion on the futures? Oh, it was great. It really changed my career. Never raced a futures race. They didn't exist when we were coming up. The only thing that existed at the time was Monster Cup when they had the Super Minis.
Yeah, I raced Monster Cup the year AC raced on 250s.
And how scary was that?
And it's even still that is outdoor. I still didn't know what Supercross was after that race.
Yeah, right. But it was scary, right? For you to go into that.
I almost didn't want to do it again. I was like, I got my T-shirt. I'm out of here.
But this is where I want the parents who've been willing to stick with us this long in this week's show is, you know, when you're frustrated going, what does it take for me to get my rider into the futures program? It's going to take you paying for a pay-to-play program to then be able to go to a track to then you're going to get an invite. It's
who you know. It unfortunately is.
I get this question a lot, and that's what I wanted to make sure, Derek, when you had the genesis of the idea of, hey, let's do a show about navigating it, then you get some messages from parents. They're like, I can't break the code. That's what I want to share with everybody here today. You're going to have to pay to play to break the code. And that's not to be insulting, but a lot of these parents are like, I'm beating my head against a wall. I'm calling this number. I'm emailing this person. I'm calling or emailing company A. They tell me to reach out to company B. Company B says refer back to company A. And the parents are like, what the hell am I supposed to do?
So Kyle, on that topic, you were in the genesis of the Honda of Houston program. So you got to have a hell of an amateur program. I mean, that was the program of the era with like everybody or anybody who is anybody, right? How important do you think the motorcycle is in amateur racing, especially today? And I'll give you my opinion up front. I am in the mod business. I work really hard at it. I just blew a bike up today in the dyno working really hard on it. And literally, so my day was not so good. I don't think today, personally, the bike is that important, meaning really good stock 250s can carry you all the way through B class for sure, like a great running, perfectly good stock bike. But suspension is important in my opinion, right? That has to be right. But how important would you say the bike is? And is it worth somebody going and buying onto these programs that exist to get that opportunity on equipment, in your opinion? Because I could certainly be wrong.
No, I think you're right. I think you're spot. I think one of the most important things is that you understand how your bike works. I think, you can't just go by, a rider, and I'll continue just to use him because we've already brought up Caden, rider for PC. They have multiple engine packages that they'll allow him to have at certain times, right? Race is different. He's got a practice race. He's got an amateur race. He's got a local race, right? And they're all different. And he'll go from one bike to the other, and his lap time will be relatively the same. But he'll enjoy a bike more because he understands it more. Or he, you know what I mean? If he wants a faster motor, it's not because he wants a faster time. He just understands how the bike works. It rolls better, and that's what he likes about it. It's not, I need it to be faster, I'll win. No, that's not it. That wasn't it at all. You know what
he
I mean?
Nailed it. His lap times are about the same.
Yeah, no kidding. And where I get so confused with people is, do you not see the 250 and the 450 times are damn near the same?
It's sometimes faster on a 250.
What's got to be the biggest, spill the beans on purchase the motorcycle and it's going to buy you the championship.
Hey,
you guys run the same
you are preaching to the choir. I am in the mod business. I do it because I love it. The bikes are so good nowadays that it is not the reason you win or lose. Now, it is the reason you win or lose if you send it out to all these companies. Me and Coach talk about this, and you end up getting your bike back worse. Or like you said, it may not be worse, but your kid doesn't understand it yet, or he's not comfortable with it yet, or doesn't know how to make it work. So sometimes you go send all this stuff out, and then you have what you think is a great bike, but it's not a great bike for your kid. It's just not right for them, or it's too much, or the suspension is too stiff, or whatever, that kind of deal.
Well, looks like he locked up again while he's getting his camera to come back here. The one thing that I'll say to that thread of thought is it disappoints me when I see parents go out and they spend so much money on stiffer suspension and faster motors, and all it does is expose how out of shape your athlete is before they even got on the bike. And I can't emphasize that enough. I'm not here to mock anybody. I'm not here to be disrespectful. If your son or daughter can't do a 20-minute heart rate zone 3, low 4 on a rower, a stationary bike, running, swimming, what makes you think they can do it on a bike at speed with the weight of the bike, the velocity of the bike, and all the track has to offer? If you can't do it on 20 minutes solid off the bike, what makes you think a faster, stiffer bike's going to make it easier when you hit the track? I just don't even begin to understand it.
Yeah, it's pretty kids. It makes me laugh talking about this because it really is so apparent that people are so close-minded with it all. They really want to believe that they can just buy it or that it can just be that easy or that's the excuse. That's what it is.
That's always the excuse, right? It's never, I hate to say it, but families are like, if I just had that factory bike that kid just won on, I'm like, go buy it. You'll be sorely disappointed. If your kid was second and he got beat by half a second at the finish line and he's on a full private effort and you guys battled the whole race, maybe the factory bike would have been better for you. But if your kid's 20th or 10th or even 5th, I'm sorry, that's not why you got beat by 35 seconds. And a great example to this is recently, and I kind of heard some back into, I'll even share it because I don't think it matters that much. And Towers got whooped by Adams at Freestone by like 45 seconds in Moto 1. You cannot tell me the Star bike is not good enough to compete with his bike.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it wasn't making that difference. Now, he closed that gap later in the week, and I heard they had accidentally put on like his future suspension for Moto 1. So that was one of the reasons.
Bullshit.
Right? Exactly.
Bullshit. What?
Yeah.
No, bullshit. Everyone loves excuses.
Well, look how quick Yamaha came out when Tomac went backwards in that moto. Couldn't be the motorcycle. He got arm pump.
Yeah, arm pump.
It's got, and the blame game in our sport is beyond ridiculous. I mean, I guess every sport's the same way, but especially with the three of us in the different wheelhouses that we're in, if a parent goes and spends the money to have an athlete at a facility and the athlete doesn't win, facility sucks. And the facility sucks, and the motor sucks, and the fitness sucks, and the suspension sucks, and the air filter sucks, and the tires suck. Really? Here's a mirror. Let's go ahead and look at the mirror. Because the thing that I look at, and especially now that the human telemetry is catching up a lot with like what we're getting off the motorcycles, if I know you're training with Kyle on a regular basis, and I know based off of race day simulations, I know what your average and max heart rate's going to be for that duration, given that heat and humidity. And let's just say for even numbers, I know you'll average 180 and you'll max at 192. We go racing and hit 15 beats below that. And then I call you out on it. I'm like, look, you weren't even trying. And then they say, well, the bike handled like crap. It's Derek's fault. And then we go and we download the telemetry and we're like, you didn't even go through 50% of the shock stroke. And then you go back to like when he did Tomac. Remember when they said how much time he's spending with the throttle wide opens over 50% of the time? Yeah. Okay, you download all the data. It's not the motor's fault. It's not the riding coach's fault. It's not the suspension. It's not the fitness. Your rider just chose, for whatever reason, didn't get the whole shot, got butt hurt, gave up. I mean, now we're into that ultimate, let's sit down. And I want to give the context of this. I want you to sit down and let's the five of us, the three of us, rider and parent or parents, let's sit down and disseminate the information. And the reason why I want the parents that are listening to this show to really stop and think about this, I don't care if it's a local race, I don't care if it's a qualifier, I don't care if it's a national. When the race is over, sit down and talk about it, good, bad, or indifferent. I always say to my clients, if you won, great, that's what we trained to do. We're not surprised, but let's talk about it. What is there to talk about? How did you create the success? Because if you fail, everybody wants to know what went wrong. Of course, that's where the blame game starts. But the reason why I want to give context is if you're working for a factory team, you get there at 6:30 in the morning, do your track walk, you're in the truck at midnight, still doing a conversation with the team manager, mechanics, riders, suspension company, tire company. Everybody's in that little rider's lounge, whether you got first or fifth, and they're talking. What are we doing different? If we won, how did we win? If we didn't win, let's say you got second. How did we get second? What didn't go right that kept us from winning? But yet amateur parents think, oh, that's only for the pros. Well, guess what? There's a lot of pro mechanics. If you talk to them right now, and Derek, you can attest to this more than I can. I just know being on this side talking with agents, how many of these riders have been on a red carpet ride, have no idea how to give feedback. So when they say the bike's not handling correctly, and the mechanic says, well, what would you like us to do? Or the suspension or chassis guy goes, what would you like us to do? I don't know. I just don't like the bike. Well, what do you want it to do? I don't know, but I just don't like it. How is anybody supposed to fix that?
You laugh on this. I deal with this a lot. Kyle probably went through all sorts of eras of good bikes and bad bikes, and he didn't know the difference between the two. Like, this one I like, so that's what we ride. As you got older, I'm sure you got way better at understanding your motorcycle and being able to say, okay, now I kind of know. But the reality is that process is just trying to learn. You don't have to be smart about it. You just have to put effort into learning your motorcycle. What do you think about that, Kyle?
Well, it's perfect to speak with you about this. Clickers. You'll send a suspension to someone, they'll never play with clickers. Now, obviously, you will inform them and let them know how far they should go, or if you've gone this far, it's already wrong. But, dude, my whole life, there's been very few people that at every single track we went to, they made a little change. Every single track. I don't believe you should ride any track back to back with the same setting. It should be a little different, whether a little softer, whether your sag's a little higher, whether the fork's a little bit more in. But I'll watch pretty damn good riders ride a whole year with the same fork height, same sag height, and never touch a clicker. And to me, that's so naive of them to not try something. Like, try to find comfort. Oh, it's not cornering well. Well, yesterday you were killing it. Well, the track is prep better. Okay, well, now you have to figure out how to adjust your bike to match that track. But they don't. They just complain. They bitch about it. They blame.
Yeah. You were preaching to the choir here, and I unfortunately, I don't know how to beat it through people's heads when they're young. They're like, there's the one camp that we've dealt with where we've had, competing clients. Oh, I get my suspension done, and you never need to touch it. It's perfect everywhere. I'm like, you're ignorant. Like, I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you, right? Like, the pros are changing their stuff, the elite guys. And to give a context on that, this last weekend, Cooper and Chase basically went down to the wire, right? I mean, shy of that last little mistake, him and Cooper within a second at the finish line? And I think Kenny was within 3 seconds. I think he was well under 3 seconds, 2.5. Here's for context. Over 20 minutes, so that's 20 times 60 seconds, right? What is that, 1,200 seconds?
1,200 seconds, yep.
If you're within 3 seconds after 1,200, you're at 0.3% off.
Yeah.
Not even. You're actually pointing like
0.15, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. So, like, long story short, you can't, Chase probably could go in and Cooper and say, man, I really wish we had hit the sag at 104 instead of 102 that moto. And that could have been that 0.2% difference. Or I wish I'd gone 2 clicks stiffer. If I'd known how the track was going to develop, I would have done that. But that's what the post-race debrief is for, to put that in the notes so that the next weekend they have that in their back pocket and their guys can go look and say, oh, man, we're looking for literally less than 1% to win this race. If I can make my bike just a tiny bit better to suit the track, and I have those technicians, and I have the ability to move my kickers and the ability to move my forks, and my sag and all that, you have to do that. And now, is it hard to learn when you're a young amateur? Yes, but it's not that hard. You guys ride every day. You could have a specific day where they comes to you, Kyle, and says, hey, I want to learn my suspension. Will you help me with that? And you say, sure. Let's go. Move your forks up, move your forks down, move your sag up, move your sag down, in and out on your clickers, and I want you to write notes on it all day long. And you can tell me where it's good, where it's bad, where it's better, where it's worse, because it's not going to be better or worse. It's going to be situationally better or worse. And then put that in your back pocket.
Yeah, and like I think that, other than Webb's mindset, obviously being above most of his competitors and his ability to stay strong, I think where his true talent comes in is like Kevin, his ability to read what the track's going to do, and he sets his bike up for the end of the main event. And that's why he's always been known to not win a heat race and win the last lap of the main event.
You nailed it, right? He sets his bike up for race pace. He doesn't set his bike up in testing for qualifying pace.
And that's what I think is so funny, is if we look at how we started our conversation an hour and a half ago, we asked, what was it that was so unique working with Kevin? Your exact words were, Kevin can read the color of the dirt and tell you how it's going to disrupt the balance of the bike. And we're talking about Cooper at the end of our show about how the track develops. He's anticipating it. The bike is set up for it. So as the track comes to him, he's able to get progressively faster. In the physiology world, we always try to train our athletes to finish stronger than you started. The problem with moto, it's not like a triathlon where you've got pretty much a static environment, right? The ground doesn't change very much. You're running on it. As you set the bike up in moto and the track is going that direction, that is something that, in my opinion, the facilities are priceless. If you've got somebody like yourself in K-Dub, and this is not a sales pitch on Form 14 at all, right? But you do have to respect the reality of it. If your riding coach isn't educating you as a rider and you as a parent, then you need to find a new facility. You said something, Kyle, that I thought was pretty impressive. And again, our conversations are never orchestrated. I want to give you a high five knuckle punch on behalf of the fact that you're willing to say, hey, look, if you think, as you said, whether you're right or wrong, either way, whether you believe you can or you can't, either way, you're correct. That's just reality. That's sports psych 101. I liked what you said. If you and K-Dub try to explain to them, not that you're trying to discourage them from going to another facility, you're trying to explain the nuances with it, but you're not afraid to say, dude, head down there. Sandbox is a great facility. They run a great operation. Go to MTF, go to Club, go to GPF, go wherever, go to Grindstop. We have thick enough skin. There's enough of us. And this is something that we've talked a lot about with Derek and I. This industry is so afraid to say, oh, well, hey, dude, go ahead, go down there to Sandbox. And when you feel like you've got the sand figured out, we're always going to be here. Come on back. We'd love to have you come back.
On that topic, Rob, on the same topic, is about your bike. So, for example, I love when somebody is loyal in the industry. That's kind of rare, right, Kyle? Like there's very minimal loyalty with trainers or with bike equipment or whatever. You remember Chris Morris when they came up? He was a client of ours for a long time, and he went to Club, and JGR was closer. So his dad called me up, hey, Derek, I'm going to go send some stuff to JGR. They're more local to us. They're obviously a premier level race shop. We want to see what we can get. They went that route for, I think, a year, maybe, about a year. When he came back, he said, look, I'm going to have you dyno this bike, and I want you to dyno it versus one of your bikes. And then we're going to have a bike that's done by them on suspension that we spent, we got a kit, we spent all this money, and we want to do one of yours. We did that. He got to a point where he goes, wow, this is kind of what Chris has been saying. Like, these bikes are pretty comparable. These bikes are fairly similar. They make comfortable power. They're good. When he came back in the suspension, okay, we're happy. And obviously we worked really hard with Chris back then. He had a lot of bikes, so it was easy to test with them. They ended up coming back to here. Now, is that because I was better? No. It was because I was worse? No. They went to a shop that would service their needs in North Carolina, South Carolina, more aptly than we could across the country. I'm a proponent of, I tell people all the time, if you think that you can buy something better than what I have to offer, go buy it. But put your nuts on the chopping block and bring it here on the dyno and see what the two things are different, right? Don't just say, oh, whatever. Like, I'm open to that. If you really think there's something better, I'm always working hard. I want to see it. I want to see if it's better. And if it is better, good for you. Go buy it. Be loyal to them. And I'll work on my end to continue to be better. So that's kind of the same, same side of things is our industry's weird in that regard, right? Like it's super weird. I had a final, 2 follow-ups for you, and I think we're getting close on time here, which was, you're still riding?
Oh yeah.
Okay, still having fun?
More fun than ever, really.
So you had
I'm better now than I ever was, honestly, at 31.
That's awesome. So I want, if I could pass down to any amateur family, is your model, which is whether or not you're successful with this, do not burn your kid out from riding dirt bikes for the rest of their life if they want to. I love that you still love to ride.
Well, and this is a huge thing for the parents as well. I may not have won a Supercross championship or even got close. I didn't sign a factory deal, but today where I stand next to Kevin Windham every single day because my parents allowed me to continue to love the sport. And because of that, I enjoyed every part of it. When I trained, when I had trainers, when I motor guys, I used to go sit at Twisted when I was in California and just sit there and just like, I loved it because I was allowed to love it. I wasn't, given this guideline of, my dad not allowing me to go places, my dad not allowing me to learn and being like, I know it all. My dad was like, hey, dude, let's learn this together. And most of these dads that are screaming at their kids, they don't know shit. And rather than learning with the kid, they just belittle them, and then the kid stays little. And then it just never grows. And
I love that. I love that. The other thing I had for you was you are a very likable guy. It's a huge, great quality of yours that's going to serve you for the rest of your life. And I think that anybody who knows you, obviously, hopefully the people watching this show get that from you too. But that's probably a skill that can a little bit be taught. And it's a skill that you use to help fund your racing and have people want to be around you in racing. That's a really big key, is be the person that people want to be around. So is that something that, how do you give that advice to a young athlete?
Be real, I guess you could say. I mean, I don't know. You just got to be able to put yourself in other people's shoes at an early age. You can't be selfish. Although this sport is a selfish sport, you've got to be able to put yourself in other people's shoes. And if you're always only thinking about yourself and only how you see something, you'll never meet a bunch of people. But if you're able to relate to people, then you're able to have something in common. And then now I'm friends with Robb. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Just like that, I believe.
And the other side of that is you have to chase funding in our sport sometimes. Even as most people don't know this, being Coach Robb alluded to it here, but even top pros are getting outside money to fund their program. I mean, there are guys who are on factory teams. Yeah, all of them. Oh, every single one of them. Like I'm not going to name names, but there are guys on factory teams. I'll even put it this way. Everybody knows the Lawrences have outside the industry sponsors. So you have to hustle that up. So how have you managed to do that? And maybe we should just put that out there more, let that be more well known in the amateur world that, hey, part of this business is hustling up funding and sponsors.
It has to come from the rider. Like you could, and up to an extent, of course, like you have agents and stuff, but I promise you, Adam Cincerello talks to more of his sponsors than his agent probably, or he probably initiated it and then passed it on. Like, for me, my mom and dad never, ever spoke to a sponsor for me, ever. I came home with Todd Hicks from Fox at the time, had sent me like 4 helmets, 4 boots, and like 11 sets of gear. And my dad's like, how the hell did you buy this? And I was like, yeah, they sponsored me. And he's like, what? I was like, yeah, I saw him at Freestyle sitting there, and one of them just started talking to him. I didn't even talk to him about gear. I didn't talk to him about I want this, I need that. And it wasn't that I was trying to essentially set it up, but I was like, everyone else likes this guy. This guy seems to be pretty cool. I was going to go talk to this guy. We ended up creating that kind of a relationship. And then I went out there and matched that with a good moto. And he's like, dude, I'll put you in Fox right now. And I was Fox for like 6 years.
And it's just cultivating relationships, right?
Yeah, it wasn't a win. It wasn't a championship. It was like a Texas Winter Series. He had showed up for Honda Houston. Like, I don't know. He was doing something with Honda before I'd gone on with Honda. And that was it. It was just like Kevin. I didn't freaking see Kevin on the starting line and run up to, hey, Kevin, hey, my name's Kyle Swanson, and I'd like to train with you sometime. Do you think you could maybe, like, here's my number? I never thought it would happen. I walked in, seen him. Oh, shit. I felt like an idiot. He just noticed I fanboyed him. Sat next to me. We just started laughing about what we were seeing. It was going that way. And then once that comfortability built, I was like, hey, do you think this is even an opportunity? If not, it's cool. Like, it's cool that this has even happened. But is that possible? And he's like, dude, let's do it.
So yeah, just that you got for
well, it also goes the opposite direction. What a legend Todd Hicks is. The ball bounces both directions. And That's the hard part too. You know, Derek, you've got a lot of guys that you buy materials from, and there's some that you enjoy and some they just make your life miserable. And it goes back to, and Derek and I have talked about this in previous episodes, for those of you that are closer to my age, if I asked you, who were Jeff Ward's sponsors? You're probably going to give me Oakley, Cinecelo, Kawasaki, across the board, right? If we talked about RJ, you're probably going to say Fox and Honda and Oakley. If we talk Barnett, you're going to say Suzuki, Fox, and Oakley. Yes, you could argue nowadays that loyalty isn't what it used to be, but there's not one person, and I've had the privilege of spending some time with Todd. I wouldn't say I'm a dear friend or he's a dear friend of mine, but the very first time you meet that gentleman, you never forget him. He's not in your face. He's as authentic of anyone. He reminds me of Robb Fox at Dunlop.
Yes.
I mean, there's guys that you can go through the sport that are salt of the earth, and as much as we talk about the loyalty towards a brand, there are people. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you know, you could say Brock Lover at the pro level. You're going to always say Robb Fox at the amateur level when you see Dunlop. When you think of Fox, you always thought of Todd Hicks. At least I did. That was the only guy I ever knew. Bruce Murata, he represented Atlas, right? When Grundle had the Atlas gear. When we talk about the loyalty, I mean, let's face it, Kyle, your racing career starts to kind of wane a little bit. You move into another capacity. Let's say you go into the product rep side of things. This is where I think it goes back to what we said earlier. We want the parents and the young riders to understand that you're building a reputation and a legend on your character on and off the track. And then if you move into a role of product representation, or you work for a facility, whether it's owned by a prior pro like K-Dub or Brandon over at Club, or, you know, each facility is a little bit different. But at the end of the day, where's the loyalty? Where's the integrity? Derek, you know, I talked about this off the record, and Kyle, with you being in the trainer category, and I hate the word trainer for myself. I'm a human performance specialist. I don't consider you a trainer. I consider you a riding specialist. It's amazing to me, and I've said this to Derek off the record quite a bit. Somebody who's unscrupulous, somebody that's going to steal money from you, someone that's going to lie and stab you in the back, they will hang themselves soon enough, because this is a very small industry. And once 5 people, and Kyle, just to put it in context with Derek, there was a particular company that owned Loretta's when it came to suspension for probably a 5 to 6 year run. They got so big, they had several trucks at the races. Well, they were selling A kits. They'd go home and get them maintained. The person maintaining them would go, "What'd you pay for? Because that's not the internals on this fork kit." Well, you do that enough times and enough people talk. Well, that company is, I think, barely in existence to this day. I don't have to talk about them. Derek doesn't have to talk about them. They did it enough times that communication runs through the, you know, I tease Derek, it's like the movie Grease when she says she's pregnant, and by the time she gets from the bathroom back, everybody in the drive-in theater knew she was pregnant. It's the same idea, right? It doesn't take long for the truth to prevail in our sport. But I liked what you said. You and K-Dub had the integrity to say, "Dude, go visit Sandbox. That's cool. We're always going to be here." And then you've got Derek that says, "Hey, if JGR is more convenient and they can meet your needs, that's cool. Go for it." And even Derek said it on episode number 2. The first show that we did together, Kyle, I used it as an opportunity to expose how intelligent Derek is. He won't talk about it, but how intelligent he is. And the comments were, "I can't believe Derek is that smart." And what does Derek come back and say? "I'm glad that you found me to be smart, but there's other guys just as smart or smarter than me. Go find them in your area." That's a man of integrity.
Yeah, and it's not fake. It's not like you're not putting on a show for people to give you that compliment. It's genuine and like, look, like all in all, at the end of the day, we're all human and we have to do what's best for us.
But that's what the whole idea of this show is. We've got amateur parents and riders from young to old that are going, "Wait a second, I bought it, I got bait and switched." Well, guess what? You're not the only one, and it won't be the last one, unfortunately. And hopefully, not that we're patting ourselves on the back, but hopefully, if the intentions are pure, it's going to internally purge those that are unscrupulous. It just does. As you said, facilities open, and within 2 to 3 years, they tend to fail, and there's a reason why.
Kyle, I think you touched on something that you were just a genuine guy, right? That's how you've managed to acquire some of the support that you have over the years. I think there's more than that. You're very likable. You're very friendly. Like you said, if somebody leaves your facility, they leave with a hug and in a positive manner. Like, hey, thanks for coming. Good for seeing you. It's not a negative destruction of relationship. And I think that that's really great. It's a skill for me or skill for anybody to learn. I heard a quote, and I think it applies to this, which is, like Coach said, you're building your reputation as a family and as an athlete when you're at the races. And it takes a lifetime to build a good reputation. It only takes an instant to ruin it. And I don't remember who said that, but it really is true. So when you have sponsors or you're going to leave sponsors, doing so the right way allows you to reopen that door down the road. And the sponsors are understanding. If somebody gives you a better deal or ships teams that has this gear or that gear that you can't keep your deal, as long as you leave the right way with respect and happiness and appreciation, you'll never shut that door away from you.
Yeah, and don't ever do it over an email or a text message.
Amen. Amen.
You know, and be genuine. Have a real reason. Don't be like, hey, sorry, O'Neill, FXR is going to give us 10 sets instead of 8. We're going to jump ship. Just like when people leave here, we want you to leave, but talk to us about it. Because I'm a teacher and you're a student, and let me share my knowledge with you why that decision might help and why it might not help. And make an educated guess. If you do that, 9 times out of 10, when you leave a company, they're a little bit butthurt, no matter if they're your best friends or not. It's a relationship. But if you do it with truth and honesty, and you really give them your real reason, and it's genuine, they only have but to understand. And it might take a week or two, but if you do it in a genuine way, you will always be their friend. And I don't mean to toot my own horn. I mean, I'm looking at my phone right now. You know, I'm going to say his name, Matt Zinasek. You probably heard of him, Derek, our local 50 dad. I worked with them for years and ended up leaving, and it was a little bit salty in the beginning, but we were real with each other. And he just messaged me at 1:38. We started this at 2:00. And he said, I was just at VP Race Fuel picking up fuel, and the guy that gave you your first dirt bike is here, and he loves you. And I said, yeah, Kevin Horton, Joe Harrison Motorsports. Yeah. He goes, yeah. He goes, he really likes you. And I was like, so you realize I've had like 19 different manufacturers sponsor me since then. You know what I mean? Like, I had to leave him at some point. But the way that we left him, he got it. He knew, like, hey, this is what's going to benefit my career. I am going to continue to preach what you've done for me and how much you can do for the guy in my situation. I've got to take this next step. And you know, every birthday, happy birthday, every Christmas, Merry Christmas. And
exactly,
you know, and every time we see each other, we still genuinely care how each other's doing. And now he's a manager for Just One and does all that stuff and helmets, and he's killing it. And I preach it right there. I said, hey, actually, you know, if you need gear, he's a gear guy. And now I'm taking a connection that I made from training and giving it to a guy that helped me 20 years ago.
Yep.
You know, but I kept that. Now I'm able to offer that to my students.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not going to end. And if one day I want to get a job with Just One, I know for a damn fact that Kevin Horton will give me that job.
There you go. It's all about podcasting it forward.
Yeah,
you know,
100%. Well, I really appreciated that you came on, Kyle. It was a pleasure. Really awesome to hear your insights and what you have going on. In summary, is there anything, I always ask this question, is there one thing, like one simple thing you could change about amateur motocross? What would it be from the rule standpoint? Or like from the organization?
From the organization of it? Like
yeah, whatever. Like if you could change one thing about amateur motocross or a suggestion, what would it be?
It kind of goes to Pro 2s, but it would be for everybody to have their own character. Stop being robots to it. Have a character. Be your own person. Be yourself. It goes back to everything we've been talking about with sponsors and the training. And all. Everyone is so much trying to be like the next guy that there's no more character. There's no more K-Dub doing transfers. There's no, you know, obviously the Lawrences have stole the show with their donut stuff and their little stuff at Supercross, but they're the only ones since K-Dub. And with all the amateur kids, be yourself. Have your own personality, you know, and I believe that will carry you farther in this industry than anything else.
That's great advice, Kyle. I actually, that's if I were to give advice to an amateur kid, it's like on the podium, be exciting, be happy, be the right guy you want to be, because that's what sponsors are excited and that's what fans are excited in. I mean, Go back and watch Pastrana in his early interviews on, in his early career. He was just a ball of energy and so happy to be up there. And you're like, I would help that guy out. He's awesome.
My mom always says, gosh dang it, Kyle, if you would have just got one podium, you'd have stole the whole damn show. And I understood. I get what she means. Like, she's like, dude, just one, you would have been just huge. And I'm like, Mom. But that Kevin, that's for the people that, don't have the opportunity to come to here with Kevin and myself. That's Kevin's biggest thing to our riders here, especially the successful ones. Caden won the championships that he did 2 at Daytona, the one at JS7, and in huge leads. Kevin was pissed about his podium speech. He said that was bullshit. That was so boring. You were nobody on that podium. The guy asked how you did, and you said good. He goes, that pissed me off more than anything. You represent Gene and Kevin Windham. You better be up there telling why it was good. Thank you, sir. You're right. It was great, and this is why it was great. And that's more important to Kevin than anything. And I've asked Kevin real quickly. I said, hey, how did the whole transfer thing start? They come to you? He said, hell no. I went to them. I said, I'm going to do it. I said, so essentially, anyone in Supercross could go to Feld and create the whole old show if it made sense. He goes, absolutely, but they're not going to do it because they don't care enough.
Yeah.
He goes, and that's why the sport dies. That's why the sport dies. It's because people like Webb's actually really good. And Plessinger is the king of doing it now, and Cincerello. But then you have Tomac sucks.
Well, you nailed something about. So Tomac said this on Pulp the other day, and again, we got to get off. But they said, "Why don't you do social media and all this character stuff?" And he goes, "I just found it easier to win my money." For him, who's a guy who can win, he can do it. But a guy like Plessinger, who's just on that cusp, he has created this career for himself out of this person that he is, and it's obvious, right? It doesn't matter if he's a 5th place guy and a 4th place guy and a 3rd place guy and challenges for a win here and there, gets a win. He can have a job for a lot of years to come because he is a fan favorite.
And not only that, it's not that he's putting on a show. He's being himself, which I promise you, Aaron Plessinger is a happier human than Eli Tomac and will be for the duration of his life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Over money, over championships, over all that. He's just a happier human because of that. And that's what's important.
And the bottom line is, even though they're both doing it differently, they're both making it happen. Just like K-Dub going and making it happen to make that opportunity available. What do they say? Luck is where hard work meets opportunity. I mean, it is what it is, so.
Well, cool. Thank you so much, Kyle.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much. Again, thank you for being our first guest. Derek, thank you for putting it all together. We deeply appreciate it. For all of our listeners, if you've been with us this full time, we really appreciate it. Like I said, I appreciate the subscriptions. I appreciate the kind comments. If you guys have anything that you would like Derek and I to really drill down on, that's where the comments are there below. I'll speak the truth. I'm not a big DM guy, so if you DM me, you probably won't get a response from me quickly. Not that I'm ignoring it. That's not my MO. Leave it in the comments below. Derek does a better job on the DMs. If you want to reach out to him, go for it. But everybody, thank you so much for the support of the show, and we'll see you again next month. Be safe.